Thank you for joining us for a video about how to tech a dirt lake model. I want to thank David Payne Racing, Gary Thompson, everybody for letting us use this shop and their car to do this video as mine wasn't ready, so we had to find one that was. But I want to thank them. So you may have heard at PRI show last week there was a big announcement that all the Dirt Lake Model Series gathered together and agreed to have a one uniform body rule. This has happened a couple of times throughout our sport, and we're glad to see it happening again. But basically the rules will be, so if you go run a Lucas Oil or World of Outlaws race in speed weeks or after speed weeks, if you're in the Midwest with MLRA or my Spring Nationals or Chris Tilley's Ironman or Southern All-Stars, Carolina Clash, Ultimate Series, really any series, I hope I didn't leave nobody out, but this is what we've all agreed to do. It's very simple. All you need is a straight edge and a tape measure and maybe a piece of string, and you guys can have your cars ready to go. Actually, when you get to the track, shouldn't be no issues. But we'll just start at the front of the car. I actually don't have a template, but when you get to the racetrack, I know that Lucas and World of Outlaws has already got one. They'll have a template that goes on this nose, and the nose must fit the template that they have. The next thing they'll check is they'll come right around here and they'll lay a straight edge across the top of the bat wings or the floppers of the nose piece, and there can't be no more than 4 inches distance between the hood and the aluminum. This one is at 3 3/4. At any point down through the nose, even down here. Actually, this one gets less at 3 inches, which is what it should. So no matter where you slide this across the nose, can't be no more than 4 inches. Then we're going to come back to where the hood and the interior of the car meets. This measurement can't be no more than 2 inches. As you can see, this one's like 1 3/4. If you have a car that's got a hood straight and level with the top of the fenders and you've got a dash here, that dash can't be dropped no more than 2 inches. That's only if the hood is level with the top of the fenders. But if it's not level, then it must meet, the hood must meet the interior just like this one does. So we're 4 inches here, 2 inches here. Then we're going to go behind the seat with the measurement and check it again. On this measurement right here is 5 inches. You notice on this car it's 4 3/4. So 5 inches right here, 2 at the hood, 4 at the nose. That's how the interior of the car will be checked. The next thing that will be checked is how the body is in relationship to the car. That's really what brought a lot of this on, is the bodies are getting a little more crooked built on the car. Over time, the last 4 or 5 years, this has really changed, and we never really had a way to figure it out, how to measure it. Kenny Canada with the World of Outlaws has done a good job at figuring this out, and in order to check that, we have 2 key measurements that must be in place before we do it. One of them is the deck height. It has to be at 39 inches on the deck, and then the other measurement will be measured from the center of the wheel to the top of this quarter panel. We have this gauge made to slide in at the center of the hub, and it'll go to the top of the quarter panel. Now you see this one may be just about a 1/2 inch long or something, but this is a totally new rule, so it can be changed very easily. But anyhow, 54 inches from the top of the quarter panel to the center of the hub. The reason the 39 inch measurement is so critical is because if you stand on this car and lower it to 38, then this measurement changes. If you raise it up, it changes because the wheelbase is moving back and forth as the car goes up and down. So in order to get that straight, we're gonna be 39 here and 54 this way. It'll also be checked with the driver in the car. That's another thing that's key. And we actually have weight in this car right now, simulating David Payne's weight. But weight in the car or the driver, because when the driver gets in, it'll change the wheelbase too. So key things, 39 and 54. Once we establish those measurements, we can do our 6, 8, 10 rule. It's a simple way to square these cars. We're going to take and measure the rear deck all the way across 6 foot. That's been a standard on every dirt late model car since I've known what a race car was. 72 inches, 6 foot on the rear deck. So we're going to establish that. We're going to go down the right side of the car, 8 feet. We're going to make a mark on the top of the door at 8 feet. And then the 10 will come into play when we go back to where we started at a triangle with the tape measure. And if this is square, this should be 10 feet, which would be 120 inches. So 6, 8, 10. Back to the left rear corner, right where the spoiler and the T-bar all counts together. This particular car is 118 3/4. What the rule is going to read is this must be 118 inches with a 1 inch tolerance. 118 with a 1 inch tolerance. So 117 would be the minimum. But this car right here is at 118 3/4. So in order to change that, if your car is under 117, simply take your front T-bar loose and slide it to the right. When it comes to the right, it makes this measurement longer, okay? The next thing we want to do is check the rear spoilers. The rear spoiler is 8 1/4 from the deck, no matter how big a hinge you got. Some people have a big hinge, some have a small hinge, whatever you can get, but it's 8 1/4 from the top of the deck to the top of the spoiler. Don't matter what size hinge. One other thing we're going to do is check down the right side and check the straightness. We'll pull a string from the bottom of the door. Get my tape measure back here. Bottom of the door down the right side, and it can't be over 1 inch between the body and the string. Now, as you can see, David's been racing this car hard, so it's not exactly straight, but it would be real easy to fix. All he'd have to do is pull this back in a little bit, probably pull the back of his door in a little bit, and get it straightened up. But it's real easy to do. Just pull a string down the bottom of your door and make sure that nowhere down through there that's over 1 inch. That'll be all of the pre-race tech. Now after the race, the droop rule is going in effect as well. We've had this rule for about 4 years now. It's real simple. There'll be 1 inch will be allowed with the droop limiter, and if you'll follow me, I'll show you what that looks like. The droop limiter bolts to the chassis, and you're allowed a 1 inch piece of rubber right here. It must be mounted directly to the top of the axle tube. The bearing mount is the best. If you can get you one of those that floats all the time, you'll never have to worry about it. But it'll mount straight up from the top of the axle tube. You're not allowed to take your bracket and rotate it forward like that. That's not allowed. It must be straight up and down all the time. Actually, if you just leave these bolts loose and let your rear end hang, it'll straighten itself up the first time you let it down. Then just tighten your clamp. The bearing one keeps you from having to worry about it. So that's a quick introduction to the droop limiter. Now the way we're going to check it is slide the jack under the car. Slide car in front of the axle tube about 2 inches or 3, somewhere right in there. It's not a real critical point when it comes to that. Whichever series you're racing with, that guy will be checking it at the same spot every time, so you should be able to get along pretty easy. But I'm gonna go right directly in front of the axle tube under the underslung and jack it up. Turn that tire here. We're gonna jack it up until both rear tires are off the ground. In the past, it's just been the left rear. Now it's going to be both of them. It doesn't matter how far the right rear is off the ground. The main thing is the left rear is just when it gets up 40 thousandths or just enough to slide a piece of metal under it, we're going to check it. On this particular car, the right rear actually, we had to jack it up more because it come off the ground after the left rear. But once we've got both rear tires off the ground, we're going to measure 6 inches in to the top of the T-bar. Not the bottom, but the top, right where the hinge is. And if you notice, this car here is at 50 and a half. That's real good. 50 is the rule. 51 is the max, but 50 is the rule. Keep in mind, guys, these rules with these 1 inch tolerances. You say, well, why even would you have a tolerance? Well, if one of these tech men throws you out, they're not throwing you out over a 16th. They're throwing you out over 1 inch and a 16th. So the rule's 50, but 51 is the max. So this car is at 50 and a half, which is right between them. I think this is a good, safe place to race this car and not have any issues throughout the night. And that's it. Sounds complicated, but it's really, really simple. I have guys say, man, y'all are doing this, you're gonna be like NASCAR. NASCAR is using tints and lasers. We're still using tape measures, strings, straight edges. So we got a long ways to go before we get there. But hey, I appreciate you watching. Call us if you need anything. Call myself, Steve Francis, Ken Kennedy, or any tech man for these series if you got any questions. Once again, thanks to David Payne and Gary Thompson for helping us do this video. Remember, go to Tri-County Racetrack and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would really appreciate that. Trying to get all the numbers we can get for our little racetrack. Thanks again, and Merry Christmas.